Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution.
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 You want a revolution?
You say you want a revolution?
Revolution. The revolution.
It's going on right now.
Welcome to The Revolution, the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we ask today's most successful entrepreneurs to share the tools and strategies they use to build relationships and connections to grow their revenue. Now, your host for The Revolution, John Corcoran.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here, the host of this show. You know, if you are new to this podcast, you haven't heard before, go check out our archives because we got some great interviews with smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs from companies and organizations ranging from Netflix to Kinko's, YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard, Lending Tree, OpenTable, and many more. And I'm also the co-founder of Rise 25, where we help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects. And my guest here today, Branden Lisi, he's the co-founder of Object9, which, get this, digital agency that started in 1992 around the dawn of the internet. And his team built a really great reputation, revitalizing brands, starting with PBR, Pabst Blue Ribbon, that classic beer, led to lots of assignments in food and beverage brands. And then over the last 10 years, Object9 has moved into helping companies such as equipment and machinery companies, helping them with building and sustaining lead generation programs. So that's what he's focused on now. But we're also going to talk about his personal journey, a cancer journey. We're going to talk about moving into different types of businesses, such as candy stores that tapped into his background and upbringing and family history. And we'll talk all about that and how he got his title, which is pastry inspector. I love that. Of course, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25, where we help B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with done-for-you podcasts and content marketing. Go to rise25.com and you can learn all about it. All right, Branden, pleasure to have you here today. And I got to hear about this. How did you start a digital agency in 1992? And what even was a digital agency in 1992? I don't even think that was a term back then.
Well, first of all, let me thank you for having me on the show. I'm honored to be on your podcast, man. I'm actually a big fan, so thank you.
Thank you.
So when we started in 92, it wasn't called a digital agency. We were just enamored with technology. My business partner, John Cato in particular, is always what I would characterize as kind of on the bleeding edge. Actually, I would say I'm probably more Mr. Analog in the business. You know, I was the guy who was more in tune with guitars and golf clubs and that kind of thing. But we always had a technology bent to our business. And when we started, I was 26. I think John was 24. And the only marketing directors who are our ages at that time were in telecommunications. And so really kind of the clients in a lot of ways sort of drug us more towards or opened us up towards digital marketing because that's what they needed and that's the world that they were playing in. And so it was really kind of a inclination in terms of enjoying technology, but also really important to have the kinds of clients that we did at that point in time. And we got into doing a lot of things. Some of the old school folks that are listening to the podcast will remember Macromedia Director and some of those basic kinds of things. And we were building websites pretty early on in the process when people didn't, they were still thinking of the interwebs. They didn't really know what it was. And so we got into it. And we were just, as I said, in our pre-production call, we're just evolving towards something. Just really were two guys that wanted to kind of control our own destinies. Realized pretty early that I wasn't cut out for corporate America.
And actually, I want to ask about this experience because you were doing sales for a company that was bought out by one telecommunication company, eventually bought out by Cox. You were making $60,000 a year, which was a load of money back then, working 20 hours a week doing cable sales. And then one day they call everyone to a mandatory staff meeting and you're thinking, that's it. The gig is up. I'm being fired. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah. So I had been in cable sales, literally lived the existence of Jim Carrey's character, the cable guy. I mean, I was the cable guy, went in, did sales, installed them. It was really an amazing job. I was making a ridiculous amount of money for work, the hours I worked. And selling cable back then was a little bit like selling toilet paper, right? You just walk around until somebody's out and they're like, oh, I'll take some cable. And we had been purchased. We were a privately owned company, locally owned, real family oriented, great place to work, great environment, great culture. We got bought by a company called TCI. And they had told everybody, oh, no, we're keeping everything exactly as is. The day of the merger, we get paged, because back then we all had pagers. Mandatory meeting, got to be there the next day. And I figured, man, the gig is up. I'm gonna lose this job. I actually showed up the next day wearing my suit and tie. I had the one-hats with me back in the day when people still used the newspaper to find jobs. And I walked in, and I was in a room with all the other sales guys, and my new sales manager walked in and went, everybody in that other room, there's about 200 of them, and they're all getting fired, but we're keeping you guys because you're the ones who are making money. And I left there that day after seeing the kind of devastation that they wrought on that company. They were tearing out a lot of people right before their pensions were due and whatnot, try to save money. And I just really didn't like the way they handled any of it. It was not very classy. And called my best friend up from college and said, hey, man, that idea you have for business, let's do it. And so that's kind of what got me into it. And I was always, interested in science. That's where I thought I was going to be, because I was a chemistry major in college, but I got into marketing and sales and really loved it. And kind of found a natural aptitude, and that background in the telecom world and understanding kind of how the cable and telecommunications networks worked gave me some credibility to help me get clients in the telecom space. And that's really where we were for the first decade of our business. And
so
we moved.
So in a sense, it was kind of taking some of the skills you'd honed working for this larger company and then kind of spun them off doing it for yourself.
Yeah. And I think, some of it was that, it wasn't always around the technology. It was understanding that what drove the business was subscriber acquisition and churn reduction, right? I mean, that's the metrics that matter in the world of, connectivity. Can I get subscribers and can I keep them? It's just like software sales. And so I kind of understood the marketing and sales drivers of that first business from the bottom of the organization. But when I would walk into a telecommunications business, they were still very sales driven back in the 90s. And I could relate to them and talk with them on their terms and their metrics. And they felt understood. And I think that's kind of been a central theme of my experience as a marketing person for 30 years is you have to understand the category, and you have to be able to relate to the client and the pain and the issues and the pressures that are facing that client. Yeah. And so that's really what allowed us to transition into telecommunications. And that got us into some big companies. We got to ride the WorldCom rocket ship to the moon while they were in growth through acquisition mode. And fortunately, we got out when they got into growth through fraud, which came a little bit later. And then we pivoted a little bit, did some self-promotion, because one of the projects we did for the telecom company turned out to be very instrumental. We had done prepaid calling cards, and we were actually the ones that introduced prepaid calling cards as a consumer product in the US. Up until that point in time, they were really a consumer product or collectible kind of product, and they were more prevalent in Europe, where they had a lot of currency issues and whatnot. And we rolled out prepaid calling cards in the US, and that was our first packaged goods project. And then we leveraged that one case study into getting work for PBR. And that work led to literally millions and millions of dollars worth of work for hundreds of different kinds of brands in the world of consumer packaged goods. And, so
and PBR has gone through this kind of up and down over the last 25, 30 years, where it was trendy, then it wasn't trendy. Where were you in that evolution? Was it
we were at the genesis of it. Yeah, we were the guys that were part of it. And there's a guy named Neil Stewart, who was the brand manager, who I think was super instrumental. He and the partners on the group of people that were on our agency team working together, really had a very dynamic client agency understanding of the product and the brand and the consumers. And there was a lot of interest in authenticity. And that was sort of the foundational element of the PBR resurgence. And so we were right there in the heart of it for 2000. And we get a lot of credit for it, and I think rightfully so. But Neil Stewart, who was the brand manager, really was an excellent brand manager, understood the product, understood the customers, and was a great person to work with. And the work we did grew the brand substantially. We ended up doing work across their entire portfolio. I think it was 35 brands. And that gave us a real good foundation in the wine, beer, spirit space. And then when they sold that business off, a lot of those PBR brand managers went to other places and ended up calling us, and we worked on their brands. But it also gave us a lot of national credibility for brand revitalization, and that led to a call from Diageo. And we
One of
got
the biggest liquor
into
brands.
Diageo.
Yeah, it's a huge liquor brand. And you actually got that huge account through a cold call, and you're a big fan of cold calling even to this day.
Yeah, man, it still works. You know, everybody's enamored with digital marketing, and rightfully so. And we do that. But getting on the phone or having that kind of capability to reach out to people and engage with people and start a conversation still matters in this business, because this is inherently, like many other businesses, very relationship driven.
How does it work today? What are best practices for cold calling today?
I don't know if I would say I understand all the best practices, so I'll use the EO paradigm of speaking from experience.
Which works for you?
Yeah, we use a tool called Zoom Info. A lot of different takes on that product out there. There's some pluses and minuses, but it's a pretty good database. We're very focused on digital lead generation for manufacturing companies, especially OEMs that sell through dealer distributor networks. That kind of company has some very specific nuances that have to be addressed in their digital marketing solutions that we kind of figured out we know how to do. And so we build that list. And then in addition to using LinkedIn and email to target those people, we get on the phone and call them and say, hey, marketing director, are you using outside agencies? Are you using more than one? Do you have a gap? Is there an opportunity? And, there's a little bit more to it than that, but that's really the foundation of it is, are you happy with what's working right now? And if you're not, let's start a conversation and see if this goes somewhere. And it's worked. And it's worked for 30 years.
When you got into working with Diageo, one of the brands you worked on was Red Stripe, right?
Yeah.
And Red Stripe also kind of is similar in the sense to PBR in that it's a brand, a beer brand that's been around for a long time, has a long history. Talk a little bit about what working on that brand was like.
Well, there's a bazillion stories that we don't have time to talk about, because working with the Jamaicans was a very different experience, and it was a hell of a lot of fun.
Oh, you got to give me one of them. You can't
I'll come back to the Jamaican stories in a bit. But
okay.
One of the key things was when Diageo actually came because it was them calling us, which was interesting. Because it's awfully hard to get into Diageo, just like it's hard to get into P&G or Coke, because they built walls to keep all the agencies out. And we were actually judging a competition, I think in Chicago, around brand revitalization. And they read about some case studies and things that we were doing. And so they wanted to revitalize Red Stripe because all the tariffs that were protecting all those island beer brands were going away. And they realized they needed to, actually get good at marketing the brands, and Diageo had just bought them. What was different is that PBR has been around 180 years and it kind of fallen on the wayside, and it was competing in the US against very overly commercialized beers. And there was sort of a rebellion against over commercialization that was being, sort of predominantly led by Budweiser, Coors, and Miller. Right back in the day, those were the three things. And we were the underdog brand, and we were kind of going for that retro chic and connecting with a very specific audience that was appreciating and looking for retro authenticity, which the big beer brands could not offer. When we first started having conversations with Diageo, they actually were thinking, well, that's kind of what we need to do because we have this old brand. And the reality is that in Diageo's case, they needed to go the other way. They were losing market share because Heineken and in particular, Heineken and Guinness were coming into that market, which were also Diageo brands with very sophisticated, sexy packaged products and very modern marketing campaigns. And so the revitalization of PBR was about tapping into that authentic route. The revitalization of Red Stripe was more about making it progressive and modern. And so, it goes to say, yeah, they're both lagers and they taste, poured them in a cup. Most people couldn't tell you the difference between the two. But given their marketing circumstances and the customer perceptions at the time, they required diametrically opposed solutions. And so anyway, it was fun to work on. One story with those guys is, we go to this place where, we're being shepherded around and we're like, okay, we're going to go out and learn who the customers are. And they gave us a bodyguard in this Jeep to drive us around because it was 3 white guys riding around Jamaica in the hinterlands, right? We don't know where we're going. They're like, oh, no, we're not going to let you ride around anywhere because you'll never come back. And they took us out to a bar and we met this guy who moved a lot of booze through his bar. And it was this strip club. And this guy talked to me for 20 minutes and I never understood a single word he said because he spoke in such patois. And so like the whole time we're doing this and we're listening to this guy and he's the most menacing human being I've ever met in my life. I mean, it was just like, this guy is like a killer. And, we're just these 3 dudes from Baton Rouge that are just trying to sell some beer. And it was amazing because the bodyguard / driver would end up translating everything for us because we didn't understand a word anybody was saying because they don't speak English very well. They speak a patois. Yeah. So the whole thing, I mean, it's just bizarre stories where you kind of go into this subculture that you have no point of reference from. I mean, the people, the conditions they live in, just the way they drink beer. One insight, one of the problems that Red Stripe had with the locals is that they don't drink their beer refrigerated. So when they go up to the bar, they will buy 3 beers and they put they loop their fingers around the neck of the bottle and they loop another one and they'll actually turn the labels out so people will see it, what they're drinking. And then they'll have another one. They might have a joint in their hand or a cigarette and another beer. So they'll go get 3 beers. It's hard to have 3 beers in your hands when you've got a stubby neck bottle because the shoulders of the bottle get in the way. And that's one of the reasons that they liked some of the European beers is they had longer bottles and they could hold more of them in their hands and still keep their cigarette or their joint while they're drinking. Wow. And so it's like, how do you overcome that? Right. Because you're not getting rid of the stubby bottle. That's iconic. Right. But it's kind of digging into all these weird little things that you kind of have to consider when you're trying to figure out how to position or reposition a brand somewhere. And so
it's so critical to be on the ground, to see that in first person. And because otherwise you're not going to know. You're not going to know.
Yeah. And I think in a way, because we couldn't communicate or understand anybody, we were sort of reduced to just watching and trying to, why are they doing that? And deconstructing it and trying to figure it out. And there were some insights that came out of that I don't think we would have picked up had we been able to talk. Because we would have been so focused on what people were telling us versus what we were seeing. Yeah. And so it was a really interesting reminder, or it was really one of the first times where in fact, I would say it's probably the only time where I ever was working on a brand where I genuinely, linguistically, just didn't understand what anybody was talking about. Yeah. And you're from Louisiana, which is
and you lived in Louisiana, which is saying something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I can pick up a lot of things, but
it's a beautiful country, Jamaica. I visited there once, had an amazing experience with my oldest, who was 4.5 at the time, going up and doing Dunn's River Falls. Amazing country. I want to ask you about August of 2005, probably seared in your brain. Actually, coincidentally, I got married September 3rd, 2005. It was right after Hurricane Katrina hit, and you were in Louisiana. Take us back to what that experience was like, and you ended up, changed the course of your life and your business.
It did. So my second son was born August 10th, 2005. My mom had come down because when he was born, he had some health issues and had to have some surgery. So my mom came down to kind of help out.
Wow.
And
are you still in the hospital with him then?
He had surgery, but then he came home when he was a newborn.
Wow.
So because he was in ICU for a little while, and then we were out actually on Saturday playing golf. I took my mom out to go play golf, and the hurricane's just churning across the Gulf. And we went in after the ninth hole to get something to drink because it was super hot. This is August in Louisiana, and the hurricane had turned. And it was like red alert, red alert, red alert. And so, we finished our round and went back, and we went through Katrina. And when you were living in Baton Rouge, which is sort of north and west of New Orleans, Katrina was not really that big of an event. Rita actually hit, a few weeks later was a much bigger event in Baton Rouge and Lafayette because we were on the east side of that storm. And it went by and it just seemed like no big deal. But then everything started happening on Monday, and it changed our business quite a bit because we had started the process of looking at other markets because we were doing national work already for PBR and other brands. I was always flying through other airports, and because if you live in Baton Rouge, you got to fly through Dallas or Atlanta to get anywhere, or New Orleans. And I'd already started the process and kind of thought Atlanta was going to be where I wanted to be. But a lot of business washed up on our shores, actually. And at the time I was in EO, I had joined EO in 2004, the Entrepreneurs Organization. And, some of my foreign mates were in New Orleans and dealing with 9 feet of water in their business and 12 feet of water in their house and breakdown in civil order and saw some pretty nasty things and a lot of death and some grim experiences. And, I was starting the process of moving to Atlanta, at least in my head. I was couldn't do it while my son was healing, but I'd already known that I'm probably going to go that way. And actually Katrina delayed that for a couple of years because a lot of business washed up on our shores. And we had been doing
the companies that were rebuilding and needed help. What kind of business was it?
It was a combination of things. Companies from New Orleans that relocated. It was a really interesting time in that, the weekends after Katrina, cars were driving around. I live right outside the Garden District of Baton Rouge, a nice old house and whatnot. And, people were riding around and just, if a house would go up for sale, you'd have 8 or 9 offers on it, or people would just walk up to houses they like. It was like, I'll pay you twice what it's worth because we're going to move up here and we're not going to ever move back. And I know New Orleans lost a lot of business.
So these are people leaving New Orleans and moving to Baton Rouge. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so a lot of business from New Orleans sort of washed up in Baton Rouge. And at the time, we had just landed, not too many months before that, the Baton Rouge Area Chamber account, which is like the economic development entity. And we were starting to do some work for Entergy, or that came a little bit later, which is the power company. But we had gotten into the world of economic development because we had all this brand experience at a national level, and people were interested in our take on branding. And that just changed economic development in Baton Rouge for the next 20 years, really. And so we were wrapped up in all of that activity. And it was sad for New Orleans, but it was really actually a net positive for us. But it never really changed the fact that I knew I needed to go to a different market. We needed access to talent that they didn't really have at the time in Baton Rouge. And, a couple of years later, we ended up moving to Atlanta. But the whole experience with Katrina, really changed a lot of my attitudes about the importance of functioning government and having alignment between, the foundations within a community, the business community, the political elements of the community. Everybody really had to be aligned. And I thought Baton Rouge actually did a very good job at that time, even though I've had criticisms about certain things that they've done. New Orleans kind of fell apart in a lot of ways, and it took them a long time to kind of recover from that. But I was able to see Houston and Baton Rouge actually rise up. And I think Atlanta rose up too. There was a lot of communities that, got their act together and were able to, benefit from that disaster. Sadly for New Orleans, but,
Well, yeah, I mean, it's no secret that hurricane has kind of been held up as, the prototypical, kind of failure of government to support its people in the aftermath of a major disaster.
Yeah. And it's not just, let's say this, it's not just the government. It's the business communities, it's the churches, it's the foundation. It's there was not a lot of alignment, in that community. And it wasn't just the political elements of it.
Yeah.
It was the whole thing. New Orleans had been dying for a number of years, in my opinion. I had watched it. There's a lot of corruption in that town. And the businesses that were there were already moving over to Houston long before the storm. They lost a lot of major corporations there just because they didn't want to deal with the BS corruption,
Yeah.
And sort of the insular thinking that you get, but I don't want to bang New Orleans. There's a lot of good people down there. They just don't always have the best leadership.
Right. I want to ask you about, after many, many years of doing CPG, consumer packaged goods, products, beer, liquor, stuff like that, you decided to make a pivot. And so the company moved into, I think you said, lower volume, higher margin type of work. Talk a little bit about that conscious decision to change the business after so many years and go after a different type of work.
Yeah. So it's really predicated on a couple of things. Number one, we enjoy going kind of back to our roots where we were technology guys at the beginning. We really enjoy manufactured products, machinery, equipment, those kinds of things. Companies that have an engineering ethos, enjoy just working with those people and that kind of creativity that comes out of that, and the spirit that you get of innovation and ideation and building things is something that it just resonates with my partner and I. But on a practical level, one of the problems that I've seen with consumer packaged goods companies, the bigger consumer brand companies in particular, is that it's a hamster wheel of people, right? People are constantly coming and going and coming and going and coming and going. And there's really no stability. And in an agency environment, it's already hard. It's all about relationships, and the relationships are always changing. It's really challenging to, build value because you're having to restate your case for doing work, every couple of years. And, I know for PBR, I think the numbers, like over a 3-year period, we helped that brand because we're the only agency that worked on all the creative and all the marketing, all the advertising. So for the sales team, there were some people that did some event stuff, but that brand grew 53% by volume in that 3-year window, which is a huge number in a mature market like beer, right? We took a lot of market share from other people.
And for a 180-year-old company.
Yeah. And at that time, then they make some changes and they bring some other people in. And, it's like, it doesn't matter that we did all these good things and we know the brands and we understand the customer. We know all these things. I'm going to bring my other guys in. And then they brought the other guys in.
Demoralizing.
It is. It's demoralizing for the team. It's aggravating as hell for me as a business owner, but it's demoralizing. You pour yourself into all this stuff. And after a few years of that, it's like, you know what? To hell with these people. I'm tired of chasing my tail. And the other thing I found through the years is that the bigger the CPG companies, the more they treat agency people like whores, Amsterdam window. And it's like, I'm not a whore, man. I'm not going to be treated like that. Yeah. And I enjoyed working with manufacturing companies. I enjoyed the people. There's a lot more stability in those companies. The people that get in those businesses tend to stay in those businesses more. And we just like the people. And at the end of the day, this isn't about, after 30 years, man, it's not about, all the creative work you get to do. It's about the people you work with. Yeah. And both in the company and outside the company. And, one of the things I'm very proud of, the average tenure in a marketing agency in the United States, I think, is somewhere around 26 months. I wouldn't, necessarily quote myself on that, but it's somewhere around there. There's a statistic I read. The average tenure in our company is over 10 years. Wow. And it's the culture, and it's the people. We want to work together. We enjoy working together. We respect each other. And I like working with clients that have that dynamic. And in the manufactured space, especially heavy equipment or sort of that OEM kind of mindset, you find those people there, and I enjoy those people. And so machinery, equipment, if you're making widgets that are high margin, low volume, and you need to move units, we know how to do it. A lot of those guys were really behind the times in digital marketing. Many of them still are, especially as it relates to setting up a MarTech stack and doing it at scale. And we've figured out how to do it and done it quite a bit and enjoy it. And so we moved towards that. We really started that migration around 2012, 2015, when we realized we were just burned out on the CPG stuff. and realized that it wasn't just the work, it was the people and the constantly changing chairs.
Yeah.
And so really for the last 7 to 8 years, our focus has been digital lead gen for OEMs.
And
that has
I want to
been
ask you
very
about
fun.
the culture piece.
Sure.
What are some things that you've done? Can you point to a few things individually that you've done consciously to build that kind of culture where people want to stick around?
I think it comes down to doing the right thing, even when no one is looking, and putting your people first. I mean, I when I'm hiring for the candy stores, I do this a little bit more now because, we haven't had to hire a lot of people for the agency because we're not really trying to grow that business per se, in terms of staff. I tell people I'm the root ball. You're as the manager of the store, you're the trunk, and all the employees and customers of the tree. I'm the root ball. I'm just down here to get you all the nutrients and support and resources you need to thrive and be successful. And, I think the mindset that we have of having an inverted organizational chart where John and I are at the bottom and our job is to lift everybody up resonates. People know that we're trying to make them our clients, but more importantly, to a certain degree, our staff in the concept of culture. Like, we're just trying to make people successful and we're trying to have a good time and, keep the drama to a minimum.
Yeah.
And just do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, and just be honest and straightforward and put other people first. And that's what we do. And I don't think it's a big secret. I don't think it's some magic formula. It's just treat people nice.
Yeah.
And I don't see that a lot sometimes in the agency world. I've been approached by other people about, hey, we could roll up our businesses together and sell it off to some, roll up. And I'm like, dude, I don't view my people as assets to be sold off.
Yeah.
And I know people that have done that, and their employees hate it because the culture sucks and it's all about money, money, money. Just feed the money beast so we can pay off the debt, and then turn around and flip it, sell it to somebody else. And I just reject that. It's just not what I'm about. And
You mentioned the candy stores, and you own a couple of Rocket Fizz candy stores. After 25 years in business, you decided that you wanted to tap into something that was harking back to your childhood, your grandfather. You were looking around. I mentioned earlier that your title on your business card for the agency is pastry inspector because you love donuts. You thought it was going to be the donut space. You end up owning a couple of candy stores, which you're really passionate about. So talk a little bit about how that came about.
So I wanted to own a pastry shop because that's what connects me to my grandfather. Whenever I would go away as a child and traveled around a lot and come back home, my grandpa and I would always go get donuts. And to this day, I don't, if I see a pastry, a powdered donut, I think of Orville Fisher. And he was a really important person in my life, and I loved him deeply. And, I was always looking for that kind of nostalgic connection. And one of the things that I saw when I was looking at the donut businesses, because I was evaluating those kinds of franchises, and it was really a case of baker's hours suck. It's hard to balance a life when you have baker's hours. And, so I was looking around and really kind of grappling with that one aspect of it. My partner had been looking as well. He's like, hey, man, I found this concept called Rocket Fizz. He actually saw it on Undercover Boss. And, we really liked it because it still had that nostalgic connection to the past. That's sort of what that brand is rooted in, but it didn't involve making product, which was really appealing on a lot of different levels for us. And in 2018, we finally made the decision, we just do a business that's about making people happy. Marketing is about making people money, and that doesn't always, ironically, make people happy. And so we just wanted to do something that would be fun and make people happy. And also, we made all the decisions. I really didn't have anybody tell some client, overthinking or, mind effing something to death. We could just do whatever we wanted with it because we had a lot of flexibility within a construct. And so we bought the franchise. We opened our first store in February 2019. And I was really the one that kind of went in and set the store up. And I fell in love with it, man. It was so fun to just put an apron on and walk around the store, talk to people, ring up their candy and figure out what or hear that memory, because if you stand in that store, you're going to hear, I haven't seen that since. And that connection to your past and your childhood and those important memories are wonderful to be a part of creating. And so we decided, hey, man, let's do more of these, because it's also a profitable business and it's a fun business, but it's also, it's good mailbox money. That's kind of how we looked at it. And, our ability to hire managers was super important. And we hired a phenomenal one in Missy, and she's still with us. And we were going to do some more. And I took my son and some scouts. And we went to Nepal and hiked up to base camp through the Himalayas. And while all that was going on, some things happened with me medically. When I came back, I found out that I had kidney cancer. And that kind of delayed it because I had some surgeries, and then COVID hit, and I had more surgeries and more surgeries. And in February 2021, I'm looking at it going, I honestly don't know how much time I have left. So let's just start doing it. And we opened up our second store in Knoxville last year, which is very successful. And we're opening up our third store in Greenville. Permit in the city of Greenville permitting office willing will be open in September of 2022, and got a couple of markets slated for 2023. So I'm just going around planting candy orchards, man.
It's been an eventful couple of years for you. How was it running this business? You have this new business. You only have a year before COVID, cancer diagnosis. How have you managed to keep all these things running? Because
it's the people around me. It's the team. It's the people. It's not me. I play a role in it, but it's John, my partner, who's just been, the best person. I've been partners for 30 years. You think about that, man. It's like being married. And all the people on the Object 9 team and all the people on the Rocket Viz team. It was never a question. Everybody just said, yeah, look, do what you need to do, go get well, and we'll take care of it. And so I've never worried about it. I've never sat there and went, oh my God, what's going to happen if I'm not there? I just, those people have my back. And so
what about opening, a new store in a new city that you don't know as well? Maybe you don't know the lay of the land as well. And do you bring the manager from the previous location, or do you hire someone brand new? Because that can be fraught with danger.
Yeah. So I feel like picking a location, because I've done economic development work, I actually feel like I have a really good understanding, because one of that high volume, low margin businesses that we do that's not manufacturing is franchise development work. Right. It's the same kind of concept, just it's a B2B sale. And I actually did a lot of that over the COVID experience, and I got a good handle on that. But I always kind of understood how to do site selection. It's a marketing question, really. And I go into a market and I evaluate it because I know exactly what I'm looking for. And I love doing that on the ground research piece. One of my former mates said, why don't you outsource that? I was like, dude, that's my favorite part. It's the hunting, right? Finding the spot. Because I have two decisions. Where do I put it, and who do I hire to manage it? And those are the ones that I want to take responsibility for. And I feel like I'm the most qualified person to make those decisions in our business on the team, because I know how to interview people and I know what I'm looking for. And, I think we're going to have a third store that's super successful. Everyone on the team and the corporate side is super excited once they finally saw the market, because they'd actually not seen the market. They're more West Coast guys. And so, the idea of how do I manage all of that? I bring the managers in to help get the store set up from other locations and other staff members, and that'll continue to happen because I think it helps foster community. But I actually am looking for somebody who's going to be, rooted in that community. Because when I put a candy store in, I call it the candy orchard. All the LLCs are the Knoxville Candy Orchard or the Greenville Candy Orchard. And I look at it like planting an orchard of trees. You don't get the payoff for a long time, but it's not a let me make money next quarter kind of thing. It's, I'm planting this so that my children, my wife and my children should, I shuffle off the mortal coil. There's going to be an annuity there for them. And in that and that team long after I'm gone. So I take a lot of joy in finding that location and hiring that manager. And I actually get to hire one this week. It'll be I get to go up and do my final interviews for my Greenville and get to pick somebody this week. So I'm excited about
That's
that.
great. I want to wrap up with my final question, which is I'm a big fan of gratitude. I'm a big fan of expressing gratitude to people who helped you along the way, especially peers and contemporaries. I know with your cancer diagnosis, when you were going through that battle, we talked beforehand about your EO forum mates that were really instrumental, really helpful for you. You mentioned others during this interview. Who would you want to acknowledge publicly for helping you in terms of peers and contemporaries?
My business partner has probably been the most important person in my professional life. I mean, he and I were best men at each other's weddings. We became men together. We both got married. We had kids. Kids have grown up and are almost out of the house. So I don't want to go without mentioning him. But also, especially going through so much change and some of the emotional challenges that you deal with when you find out that you have a cancer diagnosis and your lifeline, does not look very long. Being in EO, my forum mates, my epic forum mates in the Atlanta chapter, Kelvin, Derek, Hano, Josh, David, Colby, those guys and all the guys, Ryan and folks that were in the forum throughout the years, Hugh and whatnot, going in, dealing with the cancer diagnosis in particular, having those guys there to be able to talk to about mortality and working through the emotions of that was probably one of the most valuable experiences I ever got in my 18 years of being in an EO chapter or an EO forum, because I really didn't have anybody to talk to about what my life, was potentially going to be, given that, I didn't have 30, 40 years ahead of me. I might have 4 or 5. And I could live 4 or 5 or 40 or 50 years, right? But the math does not suggest that. And that I was enormously grateful for that opportunity to be able to share that with those guys and have that love, because it's what it was. It was love that was given back to me and surrounded me as I went through that, is one of the things I'm most grateful for in my life, outside of my wife and my kids, for sure. It was exactly what I needed when I needed it. And for that, I will always be grateful to all those guys in the Epic Forum.
Branden, it's such a pleasure sharing your story. Where can people go to learn more about you, connect with you, and where can they go buy some retro candy?
Well, they can go to the nearest Rocket Fizz, where you can go to rocketfizz.com and find a location near you. If you're in Columbus, Knoxville, or Greenville, South Carolina, I'll sell you some candy, but you can go to any one of the other stores. If you want to get in touch with me about marketing work or talk about entrepreneurship or what that journey is like, you can find me on LinkedIn, Branden Lisi, Lisi. Or you can reach me through object9.com. You can fill out a form and, it'll come to me. All the information and submissions of names and whatnot on the website always come to me, and I'll follow up with you and answer any questions you have or help you in any way I can.
Just telling my kids recently about the candy cigarettes. Do they still sell those anymore?
Oh yeah, man. We sell a ton of those. Yeah. A very popular item.
That's such a funny thing, isn't it?
It is, but it's something from your childhood, right? Other
It
people
is.
like pixie straws. For me, it was Goo Goo clusters, marathon bars or Idaho Spuds or whatever. I mean, everybody's got their thing that they remember. And that's one of the cool things about our candy businesses.
Yeah, we're fortunate we have an independent candy store, which isn't as cool as a Rocket Fizz, which I've been into Rocket Fizzes before. Yeah. But there's an independent candy store in my town, which it's just such a joy to take my kids there and a chore, but also to see the looks on other people's faces as they walk in.
Yeah. One of the thing I'll say about the candy business is, The why of that business is so simple, right? Your job is to make people happier when they walk in. They're happier when they walk out than when they walk in. That's it. That's your job. How you do that? Okay, here's how you do it, right? It is so fun to have a business where it's just about making people happy and smiling, because nobody ever walks into a candy store in a bad mood, or they are in a bad mood. They're consciously going in there to put themselves in a better mood. So you generally deal with a lot of happy people when you're at a candy store. And that's great. That's the cool thing about the business. Great.
Thanks so much, Branden.
Thank you, John. Again, it was a pleasure being on your show.
Thank you for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast with John Corcoran. Find out more at smartbusinessrevolution.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list and join the revolution. Revolution. And be listening for the next episode of the Smart Business Revolution podcast.